Chapter 291. You want me to teach you? Yes, please. Paris bowed his head again. However, Gallihan refused. I'm not a great father enough to teach anyone. There was a sign of loneliness on his face of saying so. I'm just a lucky father. Florentia resembles his strong wife. She grew up on her own, and suddenly she became a tree big enough to provide shade to so many people. All Gallihan did was watch the child grow by her side. So, Your Majesty's request. No, father deserves it. It was a firm word. Gallihan's gaze, which had been sinking into the empty glass like a habit, headed back to Paris. As you know, I grew up without knowing that it was blood affection, not to mention the warmth of parental affection, Paris said quietly. But I vaguely know that what it is. It's because I watched Tia, who was happier than anyone else, from her father's infinite affection and trust. Suddenly, a soft smile appeared on Paris' lips. It's not because you're Tia's father. I'm asking someone I know who has done the best job of a father. Your Majesty, give me a chance to be a good father too. I want to be a person who is not ashamed of Tia and her future child. Gallihan stared for a moment at the red eyes, which looked like they had no candy applied. A younger face overlapped as they faced each other without avoiding their gaze. Even then, Perez looked over there. He thought so. He thought Perez was a strong child like Tia. He smiled and asked while touching his mouth, You mean that you think you're not good enough to be a good father because you grew up without knowing injustice? Yes, that's right. Galliahan nodded his head and got up from where he was sitting. And as if he were doing it to a child, he stood in front of Perez and bent his back halfway to meet his eye level. I don't think so, Your Majesty. I don't think so. Your Majesty will be a good father. But Gallihan touched the shoulders of the young emperor, who looked unconfident of himself. Your Majesty, you will be a good father. Oh, strict and unwavering words were like incantations. His heart, which had been fluctuating with anxiety, gradually calmed down. Paris looked at a firm hand on his shoulder and thought, Yeah, maybe he can be a good father too. Suddenly, such a feeling came to mind. Paris clenched his fists at the unfamiliar sensation he had felt for the first time, but one side of his chest was reassuring. It's awkward and he doesn't know what to do. Watching the reaction right next to him, Gallihan smiled. Then he patted Perez on the shoulder as if to soothe him. By thinking about how to become a good father, Your Majesty already has the qualities. Thank you. Besides, Your Majesty is already far ahead of me in the past. Me? Yes, at least Your Majesty is fine. When I first found out that Shan was having a child, I cried like a child. G.N. Perez. Gallihan's words became more and more blurred. No way. Perez averted his gaze. Cough. Galliahan, who somehow managed to catch the laughter that was about to burst out with a cough, took a breath and said, Anyway, don't worry too much. I and the people of Lombardy will be there to help. Then suddenly, something that could be of direct help to Perez came to mind. Please wait here for a moment, Your Majesty. Having said that, Galliahan went into the room. Whoa. Perez, who was left alone, glanced at the back and sighed and swept away his awkward face, and he looked down at his hands. Feeling of frustration, which seemed to be standing alone in front of the waves, as big as a house, disappeared, but his shoulders became a little heavier. Good husband, good father. Maybe it's the difficult homework he's ever done. However, there was a faint smile on Perez's lips. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The wedding is soon approaching. Tomorrow. Perez returned to the imperial palace early in the morning, saying he had something to prepare. For a while, I felt like I was back to my daily life. Besides, I was busy too. It was because I had a lot to prepare for after the wedding, as I had to officially take over the work of the empress. All day long, the heads of the vassal families came and went in and out of my office. I didn't forget to congratulate everyone on hearing the news. And the last turn, finally. Welcome, Clarivan, I greeted happily. Hello, Lady Florentia. Huh? Something was strange. The polite greetings and neat payment documents were all Clarivan-like. A strange sense of incompatibility crept up. There's a lot of things to pay for today. It's kind of like that. What could it be? I was troubled as I signed the documents handed over by Clarivan one by one. Sark, sark. There was only a sound of a plug pen moving in the quiet office. Oh, and I realized Claravan was silent, even the usual jokes. I took a break from exchanging documents, looking at Claravan's face. Unbelievable. It was the most expressionless face I haven't seen in a long time. It was Claravan who always smiled in front of me. Oh, in the end, there was only silence in the office until the last signing. Oh, I can't. It was when I first tried to break this strange atmosphere. Clarivan, I just want to ask you one thing. Clarivan opened his mouth, organizing the signed documents. Was the incident that the matriarch collapsed the other day also had something to do with the baby? Oh, right. I bit my tongue in my mouth. I completely forgot. Clarivan was one of the few people who knew that I suddenly collapsed. He must have been very worried about that. There have been so many things that I forgot to explain the reason properly. He's angry. It's understandable. I responded quickly with a sense of apology. That's right. It happened because I had severe morning sickness. Even if Clarivan complained about my indifference, even if he was angry, I was going to accept it. However, I see. All right. Is that all? When I asked puzzledly, Clarivan added briefly, Congratulations, Lady Florentia. It really looked like it was over. In the end, I asked out of curiosity, Are you angry? What? No, I think so. I don't know about others, but I should have told them in advance that I was in a state of emergency because I thought I was in a bad health. That was right. No, even if that wasn't the case, I should have paid more attention to Claravan. He is my teacher, the most trusted colleague, and a friend who has been with me for a long time. I'm sorry, Claravan. Hearing my apology, Claravan had a strange expression on his face. He put down the payment document he was holding in his hand for a moment and then asked, "May I speak as a person who has been watching Lady Florentia for a long time, not as the top owner of Lombardy for a while?" Finally, the time has come. I nodded resolutely. Then excuse me for a moment. With my permission, Clarivan made strides forward. What will he say? Will I be scolded for not fulfilling my duty as a matriarch? I looked up at Clarivan standing in front of me with a slightly nervous mind while thinking about this and that. Clarivan, a smile built like a lie on a cold face, was all out of my expectations. It was as if I had witnessed the moment when ice flowers were blooming. I'm proud of you. Something ruffled my hair while I was still looking up blankly. It was Clarivan's stroking hand. When did you grow up so much, my little girl? Theory. Something rushed up without a break. If there is an opportunity, this Clarivan will teach the next baby with all my heart. Ah, really? I tried not to cry. Still, under the hand gently stroking my hair, I was back to the child of the day when I first met Clarivan with a book in my arms. You know, this is cheating. Suddenly, my voice was wet with water. I know, but I really wanted to tell you. Thank you. Eventually, a drop of tears flowed down. Clarivan wiped away those tears without hesitation with a smile on his face, but without that reward, the things that I had endured until now, even in front of my father in Paris, burst out so easily. I buried my face in Clarivan's arms and cried. How long has it been? There was a sense of embarrassment belatedly. From top work to education, there is nothing except that I can't do it because it's hard to go there. There's no such thing as that. Even with my little grunts, Clarivan's hand stroking my head, until the very end was warm. I sat down for a while and took a few deep breaths. Since I cried to the fullest, it was time to return to my seat. I stood up, stealing my swollen and red face with the back of my hand without looking in the mirror. Thank you, Clarivan. I'm glad that I've been of help to you. Clarivan, who returned to the top of Lombardy, politely replied, taking a step back with his luggage behind his back. The matriarch of Lombardy, the empress, and mom. The fear of doing all that, well, disappeared neatly. I'm not alone. So just keep doing what I've always done. Another life awaits me as an empress from tomorrow, but the anxiety that has weighed on me has disappeared. I cried and now I'm hungry. Shall we go eat? What do you think? Do you have time? Any time for the matriarch. As always, I naturally took the lead, and as always, Clarivan's reliable steps followed me. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It was the day of the wedding. While the main ceremony was to be held at the Lombardy mansion, and the reception at the Imperial Palace, the outside was already crowded with guests, except for the bride's waiting room, where I was sitting. Knock, knock. Tia, are you ready? Can I go in? From outside the door came a voice of my father asking cautiously. Come on in. With the sound of the door opening softly, the sound of my father's footsteps came closer. As I sat still, I smiled at my father in the mirror over the white veil. How do I look, Dad? End of chapter 9, 291. Chapter 292. My father was speechless. He just stood in the doorway and looked at me still. The view was not clearly visible due to the veil lowered forward. Father, what are you thinking? It was still a feeling I couldn't dare to count yet. Without urging my father, I waited patiently, of course, while thinking about where I left my handkerchief. Soon after, there was a sound of the door closing behind my father's back. Tia, are you ready? My father's voice was shaking. Do you want a handkerchief? Oh no, I don't cry. My father quickly walked in front of me and said, I can't cry on a happy day like this. Rather than saying it to me, it seemed to be a word of self-determination. Then I'll give you a hug, I said with my arms open to my father. I should comfort my father like this. My father blinked his eyes for a moment and then looked at me and then burst out laughing with a few. I should give you a hug. My father, who said so, hugged me tightly. Was my father's arms this big? The two arms that held me tight were reassuring today. You don't have to worry. I'm not worried. You are a child who can always make wise decisions. Warm hands patted my back. It's just that a lot of thoughts come to my mind, so you don't have to worry about your father. The hand that swept my back like that held my hands together this time. Tia, there was a time when your hand could fit in the palm of my hand. That's right. It feels like yesterday when my father burst into tears when he saw my debutante ball dress. Even with a light joke thrown into lightened the mood. My father just stared at me. Then suddenly a smile appeared in his green eyes. Why are you laughing, Dad? It's because something from a long time ago came to mind. Perhaps because of tension, my father's fingers, which were a little colder than usual, rubbed the back of my hand. When you were still in your mother's stomach, there was something Shan said. My mother, one day she woke up after a long nap and said, my daughter will meet a very wonderful person and live happily for a long time. Oh, she smiled with a relieved face. That look is still good to my eye. Then she said, so don't cry at the wedding, Gali. What did my mother see during that long nap? There is nothing wrong with what Shen has said so far. So Tia, you will definitely be happier in the future. My future that my mother watched in advance a long time ago and my father who delivers it. A gift that my parents had prepared for a long time has arrived at me today after a long time. Let's be happy for a long time. Sitting alone in the waiting room, my mind, which had been a little restless, calmed down. This time, I hugged my father tightly. You've worked so hard to raise me by yourself. Really? My father, who always the first to run to me when something happened to me. My father, who was afraid of these, who threatened him, but he stood up to protect me. A father who smiled as if nothing had happened in the face of death. And my father, who has become stronger than anyone else for me. Thank you, Dad. Speechless, instead of answering, I felt my shoulder shaking as I was hugged by him. Perhaps he's strong. Perhaps he's struggling to hold back his tears with all his might. Knock, knock. Just in time, I heard a knock from outside, signaling the time had come. My father quickly pulled me out of his arms and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Oh my father. I got up from my seat, pretending not to know, and put on my white lace gloves. Indeed, all preparations are complete. My daughter, he wiped off all the tears, but my father, who couldn't hide his eyes, approached me and held out his hand. Wedding starts only when the bride enters. Of course, I nodded briefly at my father's words. Then shall we go now? I took the hand that had always supported me, that I had long missed, and I took a step towards the wedding road. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The wedding ceremony between the Emperor Paris and the Matriarch of Lombardy was also held at Eleanor Hall, which is famous for being the largest and most luxurious in Lombardy's mansion. The nobles who entered the entrance of the hall with wedding invitations were twice surprised. Oh my, it's the wedding of His Majesty and Matriarch Lombardy, so I expected it to some extent. Eleanor Hall was beautiful and magnificent at the same time. The tangled tree trunks burned as if supporting the transparent glass ceiling, and in the meantime, a large flawless red flower bloomed. Is that the world tree now? Isn't that the symbol of Lombardy? After all, it's like a dream of a world tree in bloom. The second surprise they felt was after the wedding begun. His Majesty, he looks like he's smiling, but my eyes aren't broken, are they? I can't believe he could smile like that. The audience was buzzing. It was a solemn atmosphere, so it was enough to whisper with the person sitting next to them. But if it was a normal banquet, it would have been quite noisy. Wouldn't it be someone who looks exactly like His Majesty? I can't believe there are two people who look like that. Don't say such scary things. Even though the nobles were fed up, they could not take their eyes off Emperor Perez. The young emperor, who was already handsome like a sculpture, stood looking at the door, where the bride would soon enter, and smiled, and everyone, regardless of age or gender, was half possessed. And the emperor's smile grew even deeper as the matriarch of Lombardy walked in the wedding road. Oh, wow. The matriarch of Lombardy was beautiful as she entered, with a bouquet made of red Romney flowers in one hand, and with her other hand was escorted by her father, Galliahan Lombardi. They couldn't see her face well because of the veil, but her beauty was already known to everyone in the empire, and her supple, shining figure was like a noble pearl. At the end of the long and short wedding road, the matriarch of Lombardy bowed to her father and greeted him. Galliahan Lombardi looked like he was about to burst into tears, but no one criticized him. How much will there be mixed feelings at the wedding of the daughter raised by himself? There were many people who sympathized with her father and quietly shed tears. And finally, the matriarch Florentia Lombardi turned toward Emperor Perez. According to the principle, you have to wait for the bride on a low staircase, but the young emperor could not stand it. He came down quickly and took the matriarch of Lombardy's hand and said, so beautiful, Tia. It was a small whisper, but there was no one who did not hear it in the quiet banquet hall. Be quiet. Eventually, when the matriarch of Lombardy cracked down on the emperor, a small laugh flowed out among the guests. The bride and groom who holding hands like this stood in front of Lulak Lombardi, the officiant. Today, on this occasion, the Emperor Paris Brivaccia d'Arelli and the matriarch Florentia Lombardi. At first glance, the officiant was ordinary, except for Lulak Lombardi's occasional stare at Paris with stern eyes. Some of the guests even flinched at that look, but Emperor Paris was rather fine. T and lol, he's used to it. The happiness of marrying the matriarch of Lombardy seemed to throw away all of that. Paris Brivaccio d'Arelli declares his oath. Finally, it was the groom's turn, who couldn't take his eyes off the bride. I, who was once forgotten by the world, met you and gained a new life. I dedicate my crown and my life to you, Florentia Lombardi, because the happiness and sorrow I have felt so far, and even my throne, are all thanks to the salvation of that day. The people were shocked. An emperor who swears to give his crown and his life. They've never heard of such a thing. Well, Florentia Lombardi declares her oath. Naturally, everyone's eyes turned to the matriarch of Lombardy. Everyone says they have regrets at the end of their lives. Once she took a breath, she opened her mouth. If you're not by my side at the end of this life, I will inevitably wish to repeat my life. So I promise to you, Perez Brivaccio d'Arelli, the beginning and the end of this life. Eventually, Galliahan Lombardi started weeping. How cute. But he wasn't the only one who started taking out handkerchiefs. in front of a pair of men and women who faithfully promised everything to each other. Lulak Lombardi, who was officiating, and many guests also shed tears. TN, anyone need a handkerchief? Don't worry, towels are prepared enough here. Even the groom, Emperor Perez, at his own wedding, he couldn't show tears and bit his teeth, and only stared at the bride's veil. In an instant, the wedding hall became a sea of tears. In the meantime, the matriarch of Lombardy, who was calmly standing alone, couldn't stand it and said a word. Grandpa. Well, yes, Lulak Lombardy hereby declare that the two are married. Emperor Perez lifted the veil of the matriarch of Lombardy, fearing that Lulak Lombardy's words would end, and he kissed her right away. It was a deep and sincere kiss that could not be seen at other weddings. Clap, clap. The sound of applause as hot as the kiss of the bride and groom filled Eleanor Hall. One by one, guests stand up from their seats and continue to celebrate each cheer and cheer. Emperor Perez and Matriarch Lombardy, who are now married, smiled happily as they looked at each other with their foreheads pressed against each other. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The wedding ended safely. The reception, which may be for us or for guests, the reception, which may be for us or for guests who wanted to have fun, was also successfully completed, and the first morning as a couple, Perez dropped a bomb in the dining room of the Lombardi mansion where everyone was eating. What did you just say? I was so surprised that I even put down the tableware, and Perez, who wiped his mouth with a napkin, replied, I said I'll move to the Lombardi mansion, Tia. I said I'll move to the Lombardi mansion, Tia. End of chapter 292. Chapter 293. What is he saying now? I doubted my ears and asked back. You're moving? Yes. Unlike me, who was bewildered, Perez just smiled as usual. I don't think he's joking now. You are the Emperor, Perez. Does it make sense that the Emperor stays somewhere other than the Imperial Palace? I'm going to go to and from work. It is said that government affairs are seen in the Imperial Palace, but they come back here at night. It's impossible to split your time like that while being so busy, Perez. Tia did. I was speechless. You came to the Imperial Palace, attended meetings, and then came back to work on Lombardy's business. That's true. Even so, even I tried to ask back. Perez's finger gently rubbed the back of my hand. Just for a year? Yes, 1 year? Yes, after that I will do whatever Theo wants, Perez said, tilting his head slightly. It was morning, so his bangs that fell comfortably were gentle accordingly. And ruby-like eyes, which seemed harmless in the world, were waiting for my answer. If it's only 1 year, I murmured blankly without realizing it. No, calm down. I can't fall for the beauty world. However, my mind, which had returned slightly, was shaken again by the following words. It's because I'm worried about Tia. Are you worried about me? Yes, in the future, your body will become heavier and more uncomfortable. I should be by your side. That's true. Now that I am in the early stages of my pregnancy, there is no problem. But in the future, going back and forth between Imperial Palace and Lombardy will become increasingly burdensome. Why don't you do as your majesty said? My father strengthened Perez's words. Originally, it would be right for you to live in the Empress Palace, but it's a special situation in many ways. It is also the nobility's tradition to stay at their wife's house after the wedding and move to their homes whenever they want. There was nothing wrong with what my father said. Nobles all move in that way. My father and Perez looked at me with gentle smiles as if they were united. I took turns looking at the two for a while and eventually nodded. Do whatever you want, Perez. Thank you. Perez kissed the back of my hand that he was holding. In the end, it was decided that Perez would live in Lombardy and go to and from the Imperial Palace, but I had a strangely uncomfortable feeling. I looked around with slightly squinted eyes, but all of the family members were only eating with a peaceful face. I think I've been tricked. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A few days after Perez's moving declaration, a new daily life has begun. No, I thought so. In fact, it was surprisingly normal. After getting married, I thought a new chapter in my life was about to start. My life was still the same as before, except that once a day I had time to handle tasks related to the Imperial family. Knock, knock. A man in a court uniform entered the office, which had only been visited by people from Lombardy all day. It's been a few days since I've seen it, but it was amazing. Empress, how have you been? It was the only time I was called Empress. Looking at yesterday, did you have a good day too? Ah, yes, thank you. I had a good time. The face of the royal assistant answering was trembling. He also served as an assistant to Rabini and Janice. It seemed like he couldn't get used to my comfortable attitude. I smiled for a moment at such an assistant and asked, what did you bring today? It's about the renovation of Boyrak Palace. I see. I looked through the documents handed over by the assistant one by one. Originally, it was my plan to go back to the fourth between to go back and forth between Lombardy and the Imperial Palace. However, as Paris' residence was moved to the Lombardy mansion, an environment where I could see the work of Empress here naturally was created. In other words, the efficiency of work has increased. Isn't it possible to postpone the extension to summer, instead repair the greenhouse before the rainy season comes? While I was voicing my opinions here and there, the assistant was busy writing down my words. Then, let's do it like that in the south of Poirak Palace. And the real problem is the west. Well, Empress, as soon as my words were finished, the assistant opened his mouth. What? The renovation of Poirak Palace is not an urgent matter, so you can take your time and think about it slowly. Oh, yes, so what's the urgent matter? After a moment of hesitation, the assistant answered my question. There is not. I tilted my head, not understanding. There is not any. Empress has already taken care of all urgent matters. Already? I remember the documents that went back and forth on my desk over the past few days. It hasn't been that long. How he had accepted my silence, the assistant carefully added. Because of my low ability, I dare to try to figure out if you are not happy with the work inside the palace. Something was going wrong with the story. In the future, I will do my best to serve you with all my heart, so please do not overdo it. It seemed that there was a serious misunderstanding. I raised a hand and said, No, I've never been overworked, Sir Stain. The eyes of the middle-aged, slightly wrinkled, widened as if he never thought I would remember his name. There has never been a time when I was dissatisfied with the job skills of the royal assistant. Rather, I am surprised every time so don't worry. Empress, I apologize for the unintentional rush. The palace has its own method. I overlooked that and pushed it my way. Please don't apologize. Sir Stein shook his hand in surprise. Not at all. I was just worried that Empress Halt, who had to take care of the Lombardi family, would be damaged. I know what you said that for me. I know what you said that for me, and I'm not overdoing it at all. Rather, it's just fun to learn new things. It has been a long time since I get used to the job as the head of Lombardy, which was difficult at first. For me, new things as an empress gave me a good ventilation. So please continue to take good care of me, Sir Stain. Oh, but if I get ahead like this, tell me again anytime. Excuse, excuse me, Empress. There was even light water in the eyes of Sir Stain, who looked at me. It was a familiar situation. When did I see that expression again? I look forward to your kind cooperation. Sir Stain bowed deeply. Yes, yes, I changed the subject as if to appease Sir Stain. You said it wasn't urgent, but should we discuss more about Poirak Palace? Yes, Empress, it seemed like we will be a good team in the future. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Come to think of it, there was one more thing that changed in my daily life. You worked hard today too, Tia. When I returned to the bedroom after work, Paris, who was reading a book leaning on the bed, greeted me. It was a very strange feeling. When I come home from the end of the day, Paris, of course, is waiting for me. As I stood still, Paris covered the book and approached me. What happened? A familiar touch swept my hair over. From now on, yes, Tia, are you going to keep doing this? This is what marriage is. A little late realization flooded in. When we open our eyes, the first thing we see is each other's faces, and before we go to sleep, we warm our beds with each other's warmth. Paris smiled happily as if he had read all of my heart that could not be expressed in words. Yes, I will. For a very long time, marriage was greater than I thought. Well, it's something that I've been wanting for a long time. Long time ago? How long ago? Since the day Tia gave me candy. Lies. At that time, Paris was only a 10-year-old kid, but has he been thinking about it since then? It's true. Paris smiled softly. I thought about it every day. One day I could stay by Tia's side. It's not like that long time, but the imagination of you coming to me, even if I wait just a few hours. Hey, how can you say that? I look like a bad person. When I pushed his chest out without pain, Perez even grabbed my hand and kissed it. So now it feels like a dream. Every moment is precious, both in the courage coming to Lombardy and waiting for you in the bedroom first. Perez, my voice was a little shaky. Inevitably, you're really like me. I've always told you, Tia, you are more precious than anything else in the world. At the end of his words, his warm lips touched lightly. The scent of Perez permeated gently. Is it okay to just receive this kind of affection? His brushing made the tip of my nose wrinkled. I lifted my heel slightly and kissed Perez's straight forehead, as he does to me as habitually. Me too. I'll do better too. Perez, who blinked a little surprised by my kiss, hugged me tighter and said, So you don't have to, because Tia is already good enough. It's just, you just have to let me say this every day. Perez came close and whispered, Great job. You, I closed my eyes involuntarily at the breath that I felt with sensitive flesh. I'm home, madam. You're like a fool. As I listened to Perez's laughter flowing in my ear, I hugged him even tighter as hard as I could, that my arm stiff, and I made a resolution. Let's be a bigger and stronger person so that we don't miss a single drop of this affection that is pouring on me. End of chapter 293. Chapter 294. I woke up at the touch of gently kneading my feet. When I pushed up my eyelids, I saw Paris sitting at my feet. Is he ready to go to the Imperial Palace? The man who was the Emperor from head to toe was kneading my feet with a lot of concentration. Hi, I said good morning in a slightly hoarse voice. Then a friendly smile bloomed on Paris' expressionless face. Did you sleep well, Tia? Now that I'm now now that I'm now in my fourth month of pregnancy, Paris seemed to have lost a lot of weight. It was because he was suffering from morning sickness, which had been going on for some time. It was said that the assistants of the Imperial Palace are so afraid of Paris, who has become more sensitive and sharper because of this. Paris, who treats me, was still like the spring sun. You don't have to do this every morning. He must be busy every morning after training and going to work at the Imperial Palace. Paris took the time and gave me a foot massage every single day. You can close your eyes a little more and rest during this time. But Paris shook his head. Your body is getting heavier, so your feet will be tired. It's only morning now, but I'll do it every evening from next month. I've tried to stop him a few more times before, but Paris was firm. I can't stop you, really. But even saying that, I didn't take my foot out of him. I just closed my eyes languidly at the coolness spreading from the soles of my feet. According to Estira, it will enter a stable phase from 4 months. Fortunately, Paris' morning sickness has subsided a bit since last week. Did you have breakfast? Yeah, a little bit. You still can't eat proper food? Paris answered my question with a bitter smile. Because of the morning sickness he was taking instead of me. Paris had barely survived with fruits and biscuits. Not long ago, bread and light soup were all he could eat, but it was still not enough. I was grateful, sorry, and said to such Perez. I was grateful, sorry, and sad to such Perez. How can you suffer so much? I hope the morning sickness goes away soon. It's okay, I can stand it. Perez said, crossing over with the other foot. It's better for me to suffer a little than for Tia to suffer. I think I got married really well, really well. As I deliberately wiggled my toes and muttered, Perez grinned. His large hands are good at loosening the muscles from my calves to the soles of my feet. There's really nothing I can't do. Looking at Perez, who began to concentrate silently again, my eyes closed. Is today your day off, Tia? Then sleep a little more. You have to relieve your fatigue. Paris approached me and kissed me as soon as it was time to go to work. Shall I? Perhaps because it was the first holiday in a long time, my heavy body seemed to sink deep into the bed. I should at least see him off to have a safe trip. I will be back. See you tonight, Tia. With those gentle whispers, I fell asleep once more, feeling the warmth of my stomach, which has now begun to swell little by little for a while. When I woke up again, it was already close to noon. I slept really well. Once I stretched out coolly, I rubbed my shallow stomach like a habit. If I could, I would like to rest a little more like this, but I had to take care of my meal for the child. With Caitlin's help, I lightly washed and changed clothes and headed to the dining room. Have you been eating, Aunt? Oh, Tia, it's been a while. First, Shannonette, who was having lunch at the dining room, greeted me. I asked, reaching out for the bread, which was just prepared for me. Are you busy these days? Shannonette has been distracted by a new mine recently discovered on the border of Cheshire and Susu. It shouldn't be. It is not a difficult matter in many ways. My father, the Lord of Cheshire, entrusted the development of the discovered ore to Lombardy Mining, and Shannonette was in charge of negotiating on behalf of my father. Let me know whenever you need help from me or Pellet. It's still fine. The job itself is not difficult, but unlike Shannonette, she blurted out the end of her words. What is it? I got an unusual feeling. What's going on? I deliberately asked casually. There is a person who is bothering me. What do you mean bothering you? Is that person interrupting your work? No, it's not like that. But it's true that he's against my nerves. However, Shannonette's expression when she said that was strange. For example, he keeps sending flowers and tea leaves, and when I meet him, by chance, I talk to him. Is this what I think? It's not like him, and he keeps laughing. That's right, that's right. Aunt, maybe that. I'm sure he's up to something. Shannonette sliced the meat and narrowed her eyes. She seemed to have taken the signal from him in the wrong direction. I don't know who the opponent is, but I feel a little sorry for him already. So what my aunt is saying is that he keeps sending flowers and tea leaves and that person smiles while talking to you. Yeah, he's not like that at all the time. Isn't that person interested in my aunt? Click. Shannonette's movement stopped. Interested? Yes, I think it's the kind of thing you do to someone you like or have a crush on. I sneakily glanced at Shannonette. Shannonette, who was measuring something for a while, shook her head firmly. He's not such a great person. What kind of person is he? A blunt, mysterious smile. TN. Ayoko. TN. Why is it looks like someone I might know and that someone is still single too? Also, the place of the new mine is near that someone's place. Hmm. Anyway, he's not that kind of person. That's it for my regards. And how about you, Tia? I'm curious as to who the person Shannonette is talking about is, but as time passes, I will naturally find out. I'm always the same, I answered with a shrug, but I'm glad that it seems to be going well for a first child. It's been over 4 months, isn't it? Yes, I'll be 5 months soon. You will be able to feel the fetal movement soon. Fetal movement? Yeah, Gilio and Mayron kicked the stomach as soon as they had legs. I couldn't sleep well. Shannon had smiled. I was fortunate that I handed over all my positions to Vestian after I found out about my pregnancy. I was able to take a nap and prenatal care. I see. Fetus and prenatal care. My head became complicated with unexpected words. Oh yeah, how about the prenatal care, Tina? Tia? I couldn't answer this time because I wasn't doing anything special for prenatal care. As I smiled vaguely and spared no words, Shannonette nodded her head. Well, you can't make time because your schedule is busy. Should I do prenatal care separately? I knew it roughly. Listening to music, drawing, and traveling. As soon as the nobles of the Empire found out that they were pregnant, they also took a break to a villa with a beautiful scenery for prenatal care. Well, wouldn't it be better for each person? The most important thing is that the mother is comfortable. Yeah, I guess. So don't feel too pressured. Whatever it is, making you happy is the way to a happy child. Thanks for the advice, Aunt. I smiled and nodded, but my head was still tangled. I couldn't even touch the food that looked delicious a while ago. Prenatal care. Why didn't I think of that? I drank sweet and sour juice with a gloomy heart, but my mood did not improve. Once settled, my mind stayed there until I returned to my bedroom after work. I heard women can't control her emotions when she's pregnant. I'm sure this is like that too. Sitting in front of the table by the window, I comforted myself. Don't do this, I have to work. Although it was a holiday, simple documents were prepared in the bedroom in case I was bored. I turned the documents one by one, trying to shake off the thoughts that kept coming to my mind. Would it be better if I go to Cheshire once? Shannonette was doing well enough, but if mine development was to proceed quickly, I didn't think it would be bad idea to move myself. Oh, but long distance travel wouldn't be good. At times like this, being pregnant is uncomfortable. Startled, I talked to myself without realizing it. It was also a word that came out without thinking. However, it was also something that should not be said at the same time. I'm sorry. Your mother made a speech mistake. Really sorry. I quickly stroked my stomach and apologized, but the child must have already heard. Am I really a mother? I was busy with work and I didn't even think about prenatal care. In addition, a mother who thinks her child is uncomfortable. Mom is disqualified. Suddenly, a drop of tears came down. Do I really deserve to be a mother? I buried my face in my hands. Shannonette left everything she was doing to her husband and devoted herself to prenatal care. When I think about it, it was the same with Laurel. Laurel, who was a shy girl, changed her mind as soon as she realized she had Marilyn. She was careful about how she behaved in case anything dangerous might happen to her child, and she invited famous artists to her house to enjoy operas and works of art that she did not like very much. But a deep sigh flowed out. Even at a time when I should have rested, I was busy with work. There was also a time when the Matriarch of Lombardy and the Empress reduced sleep due to the greed that neither side wanted to neglect. Maybe it was just that the child was strong enough to have had no problem so far. You must have had a hard time alone. I patted my stomach and wiped my face with a handkerchief. But it didn't work. Because the tears flowed again soon, I started to come up with measures to make time for prenatal care. I'm going to completely hand over the work to the family's head to Craney. I, the work of the family's head to Granny. I was speechless. I don't want to do that. It was the seat of the head of Lombardy that I had longed for. Even if I took a break for a while, I wouldn't feel anxious about my position, but I didn't want to do so. The positions as head of Lombardy and as empress were things I had accomplished, and I could not have imagined myself putting them down. Which one is right? Regardless of my will, I was honored by the tears flowing down. I wiped my face a little nervously, but tear rose. Another fear rose. What should I do after I have a child? I didn't know how to be a good mother. Even before reincarnation, I was not the type of person who grew up with the love of my parents. Rather, it belonged to the side that was neglected and had a bad relationship. In addition, since I was reincarnated here, I have grown up in the hands of my father. I didn't know what a good mother looked like. It would have been nice if my mother was still alive at this time. I shed more tears because I felt hopeless. It was then, Tia? As I looked up in a familiar voice, I could see Paris just entering the bedroom. Why are you crying? Paris, contemplating as if what I was shedding was blood, not tears, strode up to me, knelt down on one of his knees, and comforted me. Dia, don't cry. I don't know what's going on, but I'll do something for you. Don't cry. Paris said so and hugged me tightly. I felt that the familiar body temperature and scent gradually subside, the feeling of swaying like a wave. Can you tell me now, Tia? I poured out the thoughts that had been cluttering my mind throughout the day. It may be difficult to understand, but Paris patiently listened to me and swept my back. Therefore, I made a speech mistake, uncomfortable. I groaned and choked up at the tip of my nose, and I spit out the thoughts that scared me the most. What if my child is born and I ruin it all? I'm not a good mother. What if I do something wrong to my child? Tia. Paris quietly swept my hair and got up from his seat. There's something that can help, Tia. Having said that, Paris came out with something in the bedroom drawer. It was a thick notebook showing some signs of age. What's this? Paris answered, holding the note preciously in my hand. It's Tia's mother, Shan's diary. TN. Oh my goodness, her mother really prepared a lot for her future. End of chapter 294. Chapter 295. My mother's diary. My head went blank. It's my mother's diary. I never thought she would have left such a thing. That's true. Her name is engraved on it. The letter Sean remained at the corner of the brown leather cover. Without realizing it, I stroked over the name and asked Perez, "Where did you get this diary, Perez?" Ah, that's it. Perez went back into the bedroom, wondering if he thought it would be faster to show it directly. And there was a large wooden box in Perez's arms as he returned. Perez, who had put the box down in front of me, who still looked at him with puzzled eyes, opened the cover. Inside was a pile of notes that looked similar to my mother's diary. Lord Galliahan, no, it's your father's parenting diary. Is this all a parenting diary? At first glance, it was well over 10 books. No, it might be 20 books. I can't believe my father wrote a parenting diary. It was the first time I knew it, but at the same time, it was very like my father, because he likes to record anything and make books. Did he sit alone at night and open the diary while raising me? I once had the same worry as Tia. Will I be able to be a good father? These are what your father gave me back then. I see. I can't believe Perez had such a period. I had no idea. He must have felt bad. I felt sorry that I didn't even know that right next to me. Perez smiled, wiping away the tears that had remained in my eyes as if he knew all of my feelings. But Sean's diary was mixed in there. Did my father put it there on purpose? I asked, but he said he didn't know, and he said it was probably stored together because the covers of the notes were similar. I see. I stroked my mother's diary in my hand once again. I wonder if this diary came into my hands. Maybe it's all a coincidence. It felt a little strange and weird. However, it's sealed with wax. Unlike my father's diary, which anyone can read, the mother's diary was firmly sealed with strings and red wax. In other words, that means no one has seen it. I guess so. Paris nodded. I discovered it a few days ago and thought about it for a while, but I thought it would be right for Tia to read Sean's diary first. Thank you, Paris. Although I answered like that, I hesitated to open the sealed one. Meeting with my father, my birth, my return, and even Bomnia. I've encountered countless things in my life that my mother intended, but I don't know much about the person named Chan. When I was very young, I remember asking my father to tell me about my mother several times, but after I grew up, I didn't ask, because every time my father's face looked very sad. So, in a way, this diary could be said to be my first meeting with my mother and the person named Chan. The hesitation was not long. I looked at Perez, who was sitting next to me, and then tore off the red wax. The 225th year of the imperial calendar, July 28th. As soon as the doctor goes, I grab a pen. I have a child. It's the fruit of me and Gali. As soon as he heard the news of the pregnancy, Gali began to cry. The sound of his sniffling can still be heard outside the bedroom. Lovely Gali. The doctor advised that it was unstable because it was still in its early stages, but I can tell that this child is the child. Hi, nice to meet you, really. The 225th year of the imperial calendar, August 9th. I couldn't go out to take care of the garden today. The morning sickness is so severe that I can't move. Eventually, I asked Gali to water the garden. He is good with his hands, but he is not talented in using his body, so I am worried that his clothes will be covered with dirt while watering. It's hot indoors, so I'm writing a diary with the window open. The doctor said the baby will be born in the spring. It was fortunate. Winter is too cold, summer is too hot, and autumn is too lonely. Let's meet on a nice day. Dot dot dot. The 225th year of the imperial calendar, August 15th. From yesterday, Gali suddenly began to vomit whenever he looked at food. I was surprised and called the doctor, and he said it was morning sickness. I'm sorry, but the meat pie is very delicious. As to the 225th year of the imperial calendar, August 25th. Today, Gali's father, Lord Lula, came to visit. As how he heard the news of the pregnancy, he went to give the medicine that was good for the pregnant woman's health and a lot of money. I asked how about writing a thanks letter, but Gali refused. He said that he would not interact until his father recognized me as a Lombardi, and that he would return all of the medicines and money. It hurts me to think that Gali is moving away from his family because of me. The 225th year of the imperial calendar, September 1st. I had a dream today. The child was crying in the dream. She couldn't even make a proper sound, and she was sad by herself. For some reason, Gali was nowhere to be seen to soothe the child. Why did Gali let the child cry alone? Anger rose to the top of my head. And what had not yet happened? Irresponsible Gali. How can you leave your child alone? Imperial calendar, October 10th. I'm the one who's irresponsible. From the day I left the tribe to having children, I made an irresponsible choice. I can't even be by my child's side. I'm afraid. I thought I had made a decision for everyone. In fact, what if all of this was a miracle for me? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, baby. That my mother was afraid too. The part where she said she was sorry was smeared with tears. My mother, afraid as I was, and it rather calmed my fears. My mother, Shan, was the strongest person I've ever known. Even though she knew her own death, she left the tribe and came to Lombardy, met my father, and gave birth to me. But even such a mother was afraid when she had me, and she was sorry, just like how I am now. Swish, without turning the diary to the back page, I counted the number of the remaining pages. My mother died less than a year after giving birth to me. And considering the remaining amount, maybe this was my mother's last diary. I'm going to read it little by little every day. I closed my mother's diary and said, then I think I will gain strength, as if we can overcome together. Of course, it would have been great if my mother was still alive and next to me. The diary is good too. Above all, I will be able to know my mother's honest feelings while having a similar experience with me. Thank you, Perez. Saying that, I kissed his cheek briefly. I feel reassured. My mind, which had been dizzy like a muddy water, calmly subsided. There is Perez, there is a family, and there is my mother's diary. I think I can get through it somehow. Perez smiled as he looked at my face, which had already dried up. I'll help you by your side, Tia. Yes, I was worried because I made a speech mistake. Oh, Tia. I crouched down, holding my stomach. What was that just now? Tia, are you okay? Come on. Dr. Istira, oh no, I don't think it's a pain. What do you mean? Your stomach. Wait a minute, Perez. I calmed Perez down and held his breath, and I slowly rubbed the part where I felt strange a while ago. I think it was around here, but it was quiet. Am I wrong? Was I mistaken? It was around the time I thought about it. Tuk tuk. I felt a small bubble bursting from the inside of my stomach. Wow, it's this. This is it. It's the baby, Perez. What? I quickly grabbed Perez's hand and put it on my stomach. Here, feel it. What if it stopped? But but event such worry was felt for a while, and a slightly bigger movement was felt from the inside. Tuk tuk tuk. I was told by Istira she thought I would be able to feel the fetal movement soon, but I never imagined it would be like this. Oh, Tara's hand flinched once. It seemed that he was so surprised that he forgot to breathe, and he stiffened it with his eyes wide open. End of chapter 295.